You know, there's one book that literally everyone who's ever thought about power has read, but almost nobody notices how badly outdated it's become. Back in 1998, these rules worked like clockwork. They were sharp, ruthless, and effective. Today, a lot of them can cost you your job, your family, your reputation, sometimes in a single afternoon. Sometimes in one tweet, sometimes just from staying silent. And the craziest part, the most dangerous rules are the ones that sound completely harmless. They hide behind politeness, modesty, common sense, and that's exactly why they still destroy careers and relationships. Today I'm going to walk you through 8 of those laws. For each one, I'll give you a real person you almost definitely know. Sometimes it looks like a huge win, sometimes like the most expensive mistake of their life, sometimes like a warning just for you. Let's dive in. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Imagine you're a genius. You built something that made your company billions. You changed millions of lives, and then they fire you. Not because you failed, not because of a mistake, but because you looked too good next to the boss. That's exactly what happened to Scott Forstall. He was one of the main architects of iOS. He literally created the operating system that turned the iPhone into what it is today. But around 2010-2012, he started acting like he was the new star of Apple. On stage, in interviews inside the company, he increasingly looked like he was on the same level as Steve Jobs, sometimes even like his successor. Result, 2012. Gone. Officially, it was disagreements over Apple Maps. But everyone knows the real reason. He shone too brightly next to someone who didn't tolerate equals. That's Law 1 in action. Sounds unfair, but it works exactly like that. I've seen it happen at work myself. When someone starts bragging too loudly about their wins right in front of the boss, within 3-6 months, they're either sidelined or quietly let go. Not because they're bad at their job, but because they became a threat to someone's ego. Have you ever noticed that in your company? When someone starts shining too bright, they suddenly get dimmed, not with words, with decisions. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. The richest man on earth spent 30 years building an empire while almost nobody really understood where he was actually headed. Jeff Bezos is the textbook example. Kindle launches, everyone thinks it's just an e-reader. Nothing big. He pours money into cloud computing and creates ADS. People laugh. Why does a bookstore need its own server business? He buys the Washington Post. Literally no one gets why a billionaire would want a newspaper. Then it turns out every single move was part of one massive long-term picture. Every step was timed so competitors couldn't catch up. Concealing your intentions isn't lying. It's the art of not showing the next square on the board until you've already moved. But there's a flip side. If you hide too obviously, people start assuming the worst. They get scared. And suddenly, you've created enemies that didn't need to exist. Real. Life example, a friend of mine quietly saved money for years for an apartment. He told everyone, just putting some aside for a rainy day. No one envied him. No one tried to borrow. No one gave advice. When he finally bought, everyone was shocked. But no one had a chance to interfere. That's concealing intentions done right. Law 5. Reputation is everything. Guard it with your life. In 2022 and 2023, one of the most famous living psychologists lost a massive chunk of his audience and opportunities. Not because his ideas suddenly got worse, Jordan Peterson. He spoke openly about gender, politics, culture, to some a symbol of common sense and courage, to others a symbol of hate and toxicity. At some point, the hate wave became so huge that he started getting erased from lectures, from publishers, from public platforms. He lost a ton of contracts, invitations, income, not because his ideas suddenly became bad, but because his reputation turned toxic for a lot of organizations and people. That's the harshest lesson of the 2020s. Today, reputation is currency. You can lose it in hours, in one post, one old tweet. Rebuilding it takes years, sometimes decades. I've seen it happen. A really good specialist got let go after someone made a bad joke about him in the company chat. The joke spread. Stuck. A month later, his reputation was damaged. Even though the guy was top level at his job, people just stopped inviting him to projects. In 2026, reputation isn't about who you really are. It's about how most people perceive you. Law 6. Court attention at all costs. This used to be almost a universal rule. Now it's a landmine. Kanye West is the clearest example. For years, scandals were his rocket fuel. Millions of views, sales, hype. Every outburst, every tweet, every fight. Pure attention. Then in 2022, he crossed the line too much, too toxic, too fast. Companies started dropping him like a burning coal. Adidas, Gap, Balenciaga, everyone bailed almost overnight. Losses close to $1 billion in months. Today this law only works in one version: attract attention through real value and mastery, not through drama. Drama gives you a quick spike. Mastery builds long-term capital. Law 9. Win through actions, never through argument. Oprah Winfrey has never gotten dragged into public shouting matches. When people attacked her, criticized her, tried to pull her into endless debates, she just kept doing her thing, and every single time the results spoke louder than any words ever could. This is one of the safest and most powerful laws in 2025-2026. Arguing online in group chats at the smoking area, almost always a losing game, even when you're right, because while you're arguing, someone else is already doing. A friend of mine, a manager, just stopped responding to provocations in the team chat. A month later, nobody bothered him anymore. He just did his job, and that turned out to be stronger than any argument. Law 27. Play on people's need to believe in something. After Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling could have just enjoyed her billions and stayed quiet. Instead, she started speaking very openly about sex and biology. Millions saw her as a symbol of courage and common sense. Millions of others saw her as a symbol of hate. And here's the most interesting part. Both sides turned her into a flag. She became a figure of belief for huge groups of people on both sides of the barricades. That's Law 27 in its purest form. Whoever gives people something big to believe in gains massive influence. But they pay a very high price for it. Endless war with everyone who believes the opposite. Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like everyone else. This law is probably the most relevant right now for anyone over 40. Warren Buffett has lived in the same house since 1958, drives an old car, looks and talks like your average grandpa. Meanwhile, inside, he has one of the sharpest minds on the planet. He doesn't try to look younger, smarter, or cooler. He just does his thing. And that's exactly why people still listen to him. He doesn't trigger envy. He doesn't provoke. He simply exists, and it works. A colleague of mine hit 45 and just stopped bragging, arguing, proving himself. He quietly does his job, and he gets promoted more often than the ones who constantly try to shine and show everyone how great they are. These 8 laws are just a small piece of the puzzle, but they're the ones that have changed the most dramatically in the last 10-15 years. The biggest takeaway for 2026: today the winner isn't the person who screams loudest about how powerful they are. It's the person who manages to be useful, low-key, and flawless in the eyes of most people. If you want to see how these principles play out in real everyday life, in negotiations, in family, with money, with kids, with ex-colleagues, with ex-partners, drop in the comments what situations you'd like me to break down. I'll keep going. Thanks for watching all the way through. If this hit home, like and subscribe. See you in the next one.